All right, we got a little emergency podcast situation. I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to get in the stream. I'm going to tweet this out real quick just so that people can hop in. But the Thunder have made a trade. We'll talk about that trade here in just a second. So interesting deal from Presti and his people. I can't spell emergency, within an emergency. Okay, let's see. I think we only have a couple people in here. So let's get this going and then we will talk just briefly because I have to do a podcast in roughly 10 seconds. So let's get to talking about it. Okay, we got a few other people in here. Okay, awesome. So I don't know the protections yet on this pick, but I do know this. So let's go ahead and read what the tweet is from Woj, because this is really interesting in a lot of different ways. But the Thunder are trading the least valuable pick of the first round picks in 2024. I think it was inevitable that they were going to trade some kind of pick in the 24 draft. We didn't know what they were going to do. Obviously, I think people would rather them use those picks to move up in this draft. That's what's been talked about primarily, just because it's a little bit more fun. But stick with me. The 37th pick in this year's draft and a 2024 second round pick for a protected first. I think this trade makes sense for both sides in a pretty tremendous way. For the Nuggets, they're going to get a player at 37. They're going to get a pick next year, and they need help now. They need help now. Oh, my mic. Is my mic not set up? Oh, thank you so much.
How about that? That's got to be better. Okay. Better? Okay. So the 37th pick in this year's draft, the Thunder just don't have the roster space. So it was, who do you want to let go of that's on the current roster? Was going to be a question. That either that player was going to have to compete for a roster spot, or they weren't going to make the roster. Like there's a chance that they draft somebody at 37 and they're just not that good. So, but the play for the Thunder, this is where you have to use your basketball imagination a little bit, is imagine super duper prime SGA, prime Chet, prime Giddey, prime J-Dub, and they are looking for one extra player. They were looking for one other guy. Think about when they had Durant, and they had Westbrook, and they had Ibaka, and they had Steven Adams, and they were looking for that other guy. And they ended up getting Dion Waiters, which was fine. I love Dion. Everybody knows I have a pretty strong affinity for Dion Waiters. But this, if you had, they had their first round pick is all they had to spend. If you had two, which is what they should have unless they trade their first in 29, you've got 2 first round picks in 2029 when these guys are firing on all cylinders, then you can go actually get somebody. Or let's say the 2029 draft is just going to be amazing and this is going to get them like a pick in like the low 20s. They could actually they could draft a player and sign them on a cheap deal. And that is also a way. Or you could spend your own first rounder and that one to trade up in that draft. It just gives you so much flexibility down the road with roster building to either get a cheap player, trade for a player. You can do so many more things when you have those tools at that time. Having 4 first rounders in next year's draft, bringing in 2 guys this year, it was going to be a lot to handle. And yes, could you cut somebody? Sure. Could you just let go of Lindy Waters and bring in this guy? Yes, you could do that. There are ways to do it. But I think having more tools to play with when your team is good is always the way to go. Because I think they have a lot of good young players on the team and guys that we don't really know, like Ousmane Dieng. We don't have any clue what he's going to be. And if you bring on guys that are better than him, it's going to devalue that pick that you made at 11 last year. So I think this helps too, because if you're paying all of those guys as well a lot of money and you need somebody cheap on the roster, what if you drafted 2 guys in that draft, brought them in, you have 2 rookie scale players, even if just one of them works out, like you're in the money. If you got 2 guys to work out, it's great. I'll take some questions from the chat, but I do think this trade is more about a bet on the current roster and what it can be down the road, and saying, hey, we believe in this group, and we believe that in 2029 we are going to need to add to this group. That's kind of what I think this is about. For Denver, it's great. 37th pick, you can probably find somebody to help you. They've been really good at it. Then they get an extra pick next year. Great. So let's see. Questions in the chat. Troy Marsh, does this cement... Whoops, wrong one. Does this cement us at 12 this year, no trades? Not necessarily. They could definitely still trade up. They have mounds and mounds of assets. Todd Ramsey, I'm confused by the wording of least favorable. Does that mean that we cannot trade our other 2024 first? I don't think it necessarily means that. It just means whichever pick, because they have up to 4, whichever one of those is the worst. It could be their own pick. It could be the Utah pick. It could be the Clippers pick. Whichever one is the worst, that's the one that they get, which I think is good, and not like it's a very smart to make that as a part of the trade, and not, hey, I mean, the Clippers come out and they just are healthy, which like that's just a pipe dream. But if they're able to come out and be healthy and they are the 5th best team by record, and you get like the 26th pick in the draft, then that's the pick that they would get. So I think it was a very smart way to do it. Instead of saying like, hey, we'll trade you this one, we're trying to predict which one we think will be the worst, we'll trade you ours. You never know what's going to happen. I don't know what the protection is going to be. Maybe top 10 protected, maybe top 8 protected, something like that. Big Fuzzy OKC kind of asked about that. I like this deal. What would your predictions be on how many picks we would use in next year's draft, or does that depend completely on how our young guys develop this year? Yeah, I think it's definitely dependent on how guys develop. If Trey Mann has an awesome summer and comes back as a really good player, you're not going to have the roster spot. If Aaron Wiggins takes another big step and he becomes a really good player, you're not going to have the roster spots for all these guys. If Jang works out, I mean, it'll be a great situation, but you're not necessarily going to be able to bring in 3 guys during that draft. So another question, is this a move to consolidate for this year to keep the team together? Also a play for the future to trade 2 seconds for a first to either draft or trade up and upgrade the team when we hit the button. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, this is consolidating what you have now to push it out into the future, to spread out the wealth, because it's all kind of clumped up right now. And I would imagine this will not be the last time that they take picks that are around this time and push them out. So makes sense to me. Makes sense that they believe in this core and want to reinforce it in the future. So I think that that's what this is all about. So, all right, I'm off to do another podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you guys later.